Welcome back to the conversation on Budget 2024 from the Office of the Leader of the Opposition. I'm Mervyn Williams, with me is Elson Lowe, and we're joined by the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton, MP. Mr. Norton, before we get your reaction to the progress in the Budget Debate 2024, we'd like to ask you for your reaction to the glaring what should I say, duplicity of the Speaker of the National Assembly with respect to handling matters from the chair officially.
Duplicitous is too big a word. The man is biased. If on the one hand, you could say to people that when our former members were being attacked, you can say that it is okay. When the point was raised that they aren't there and they can't defend themselves. And then when the shoes on the reverse foot and the attacks are going in another direction, you rule different to how you ruled in the beginning. It suggests you're biased. You really don't qualify to be a speaker, because a speaker is somebody who should be guided by rules. And let it be recalled that from the time he started, I did indicate that if you put down these rules, you have to apply it for everyone. And he came up with some nonsense that said what? This question is not a question of objectivity. I made the point very early that if it is guided by the rules, then it's objective. If it is not guided by rules, then it is subjective. And therefore, when he was talking about the subjective nature of it, he really probably was planning to do just what he did. But you can have a situation where the rules are followed, and once they're applied properly, then they will be objective. So that is the reality of the Speaker of the House. And today is not the first, it's continuous. He has shown clear bias towards the People's Progressive Party, and he lacks the ability to actually sugarcoat it. It's raw.
Yeah, well, if the opposition is forbidden from describing a corrupt government as corrupt, then we have serious issues, beside which the Minister of Education used at least one unparliamentary word multiple times and was not cautioned. But of course, the biasness of the Speaker of the National Assembly. Give us your perspective, Mr. Norton, on the progress in the debate. How are things looking from your vantage point?
I would say we succeeded in doing what we set out to do. We set out to utilize the data to prove a number of things. One, that this budget doesn't serve the people of Ghana. We did that effectively. We set out to show that in the non-oil sector, everything was declining. That was done successfully by our speakers. We set out to show that Ghana is in crisis. We did that effectively. Virtually all the data pointed to a crisis in the society. We also set out to point out to the Guyanese people that without oil resources, we did better. I think we succeeded in doing that. And I think the world knows that Ghana under the PPP is worse than under the APNU, AFC. I think the government tried a trick, which we started to respond to with MPD on Orion. They are trying to compare 2015 to 2020 with 23 years of the People's Progressive Party. You cannot compare 5 years to 23 years. Aristotle, the great philosopher, said years ago, a comparison among unequals. There's no comparison at all. How can you compare 5 years of the APNU with 23 years of the People's Progressive Party? The other thing we set out to do is by using the data, we place the PPP in a position where even if they abuse as they normally do, it would not challenge the data and the reality. And so we were able to show over today's presentations that the data provided by the PPP indicate clearly that Ghana has gotten worse under them. And what is interesting, they didn't attempt to counter the data because it is their data. And their data would have established that they did a bad job. I don't think we set out to show that they were incompetent, but the data and everything that happened brought out the fact that they are incompetent. And so I think the Guyanese people had a glorious opportunity to compare the two sides and to arrive at a conclusion as to who understand the economy more and who have better proposals for Guyana. In that regard, I think we have succeeded. And so I think the PPP is on their back foot because they cannot challenge the data, because what we did is utilize the data that they provided and establish that we're in decline as a country. The other thing I think they set out to do was to use percentage to bamboozle people. And we have been able to point to people that don't wear this thing about percentage that they are looking at. When you go to the raw data, they did extremely bad. You know, I always say to people, percentage is something you have to be careful with. In Linden, the PPP didn't want to say they only get one seat more. They had one and they get two. And so to say they move from 1 to 2 will sound bad. So they say we increase our seats by 100%. That is the danger. And we will continue to uncover it. And then we also show them that if the average man is below and he gets 6.5% on $100,000, he probably gets 6,500, something like that. Before taxes. But the minister who is at the top with the same 6.5% get 200,000 increase. And that's the danger of percentage, because the ministers got the same percentage as the workers, but because the workers are working for less, they got far less than the ministers. So I think we are unraveling the budget. I think we are showing the people and cutting through all the dazzle that they're trying to create. In fact, I think today would have stripped the budget bare and leave it as naked as it should be, because it does not serve the people, and the data establish that.
Absolutely, absolutely. We also saw several speakers touch on various elements of good governance, whether it comes to the legal system, whether it comes to ensuring that we cut out the mismanagement and waste and corruption that we're seeing, or whether it comes to something as simple as the Public Accounts Committee being made use of. Do you want to touch on the government's insistence on resisting any good governance practices, while at the same time putting forward a budget that is as large as 5 years worth of spending?
We deliberately decided that MP Ford will open the budget debate. And I made that decision because I felt that we had to establish that the government does not have an interest in good governance. And I think MP Ford did an excellent job of establishing that the government isn't operating based on good governance principles. I think that laid the basis so that once it was well established that the government wasn't involved in good governance practices, then the speakers that come could build a case. And I think Ganesh did an excellent job of using the Public Accounts Committee to show that they have no interest in good governance and they have been sabotaging the Public Accounts Committee because they don't believe in transparency, they don't believe in accountability, and they don't believe in equity. Three the key principles of good governance. The truth of the matter is, at the governance level, all that would have said laid bare that this government is authoritarian and hurtling to become a dictatorship.
Quickly, a comment from you, sir, with regard to the labeling of budget 2024 by Senior Counsel Ford as what was it?
Uninspiring.
Uninspiring. Comment, please, on that label for budget 2024, and how do you see the spending by the government over the ensuing year, in relation to inspirational or non-inspirational?
I agree it was uninspiring. I sense Roysdale would have searched for a superlative to it, but there is none. And so he left it there. But if there was a word like uninspiringness, then it might have been used. It is not inspiring at all. It is not underpinned by any proper philosophy. There is no evidence that it is part of a plan. Again, it is discrete things put together, calling itself a budget. And I think Roysdale was also able to lay bare the fact that they are faulty at planning, and therefore they are likely to come again with supplementary provisions because of their inability to plan. And one other point, I don't remember who made it, but a very important point was made that they put all of these things there, but then they can't deliver on them because they lack the institutional capacity to implement projects. So I think today we have been able to dissect the budget in the way we wanted to.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aubrey Norton, for giving your perspective on this matter. We will continue the conversation on budget 2024 tomorrow as budget debate, and we will be speaking all of our MPs immediately after the presentation would have been completed, and we will continue to analyze the budget and to get reactions from the leader of the opposition and professional economists on the way forward. In the meantime, stick with us. We'll be back tomorrow with more coverage on budget 2024.